Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Rule of Law, The Academy Speaks, the official podcast of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers. And I'm Joe Tucker, president of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers. We've all been shocked, outraged, and some of us would say not necessarily surprised about what's going on in the streets of the great twin cities of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Today, we have some people who are on the ground there in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We have the head of the Minneapolis ACLU, Alicia Granse. We also have with us, and Alicia's a lawyer, we also have with us Kyle Wisnoski. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly, Kyle? I think I'm not.
It's Wislocky, Joe.
Wislocky. I apologize about that. First off, thank you all for taking time to meet with me. I know you're busy there, defending the rule of law, defending citizens, and I know it's cold as heck there. I must confess, I've been to your city a few times. I've even been there in January, and it's cold there. And I think we're cold here in the Northeast, but that's every day that you guys get there. I want to start off by first saying thank you guys for doing what you're doing. Alicia, I want to start off with you as head of the ACLU there in Minneapolis. What's going on the ground there right now?
Well, I do want to say I'm not the head of the ACLU of Minnesota. I'm a staff attorney.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry.
oh, uh, I don't know how my boss would feel. Um,
We won't
I
we won't
mean,
tell him or her, don't worry. Just between us.
uh, I, I mean, I first want to say that on the ground in Minneapolis, Minnesota, generally, we are seeing what is an amazing of grassroots organizing of the people of Minnesota to, um, exercise their constitutional rights, observe what's happening on the ground, um, and despite the cold that you just mentioned, it's been below zero pretty consistently or so now. There's snow, there's ice, and people are still out there observing, recording, and protesting what's happening to our community.
And we see on TV, but you're living it. What is going on in the community? What's happening to your community? What's the sentiment there?
I mean, there's a mixed sentiment, and I think um, a lot of people are afraid. Many of our Black and Brown community members who are being targeted by immigration officials, not with any reasonable, articulable suspicion or even probable cause, that they are in the country without status or without a lawful basis to be here. They're just stopping Black and Brown people. A lot of those people are staying home. They don't want to go to school. They don't want to go to church. Um, they don't want to go to the grocery because ICE agents are there. They're at Target. They're at Walmart. They're at grocery stores. They're at our churches. Um,
Is their
and
presence like seen? Are they just in particular communities? Are they throughout the city? Where do you see the ICE agents and the border enforcement agents who are, of course, not trained to be in urban areas like this?
they are in a variety of places. Minneapolis has been a focal point. There are a lot of immigrant communities here. Um, Minnesota is a traditional place that welcomes a lot of immigrant communities. We have Somali, we have Hmong, we have Ethiopian, Eritrean. Um, and so some of those areas of the city are being targeted. There are also roving patrols in other parts of the city, in St. Paul, which is again our sister city. There are other suburban areas
Hold
in the
on, you said
metro.
roving patrols. They're just driving around in cars, abducting people.
That is exactly what's happening.
Wow.
Um, Yeah,
So
it
people,
is
I got to stop.
astonishing.
I got to go back. So you're just walking down the street, minding your own business, and you don't have your passport, or you don't have your driver's license. You're just being a citizen. They are stopping you and arresting and picking you up.
That is exactly what's happening to people. I've seen videos of it, I've heard reports of it. That's what's happening. They are grabbing people off the street, putting them in cars, and driving them around. Sometimes they'll look at your documents before they take you to the federal immigration building. Sometimes they won't. Um, People get picked up, driven around for 15, 20 minutes, an hour, and get dropped off at the same place.
What are they
Um,
doing to these citizens who should be here? What are they doing to them during this 15 to 20-minute abduction? And that's the only way I can think of it is is an abduction.
I mean, it varies. They're driving around maybe looking for other people. Sometimes they're looking at your documents. Sometimes they're, um, using offensive language to talk to the people in the car. We've heard a lot about that.
Tell me about some of the languages you've been hearing these federal agents talk to people. Some of the
I
things
mean,
you've heard them.
it's sorry to interrupt. I
Yeah, go
think
ahead.
rather than me repeating it, people can go and look at some of the same statements that the administration has made about the people living in Minnesota. Um, a lot of those things are word for word what we're hearing and reports of how people are being treated by agents.
So the language coming from the administration, from Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and the rest of his minions, these officers are saying these same things.
Yes.
What are you doing to help train citizens to exercise their rights and to be protected? And what are you training people? Because you see many white people out, which is a good thing, with the whistles, blowing and videotaping and doing these types of things. What is the ACLU doing there on the ground?
The ACLU has a history of providing general know your rights. Um,
Say that again.
I'm sorry, the ACLU has a history of providing a lot of general know your rights trainings, um, and have partnered with other people, other organizations on the ground to continue to do that. We are seeing a huge outpouring of people in Minnesota, um, who are going out with whistles, who are going out with cameras to exercise their rights to gather information about what the government is doing.
Have you found this to be effective? Because we've seen some some of the videos of federal officers killing people on the streets of Minnesota who are exercising their First Amendment rights.
Well, I think as lawyers, we all know that rights aren't a magic shield. Um, and even though the people of Minnesota have continued to show up to exercise their First Amendment rights, the
Hmm.
government continues to try to infringe and violate those rights. So I think that as a whole, Minnesotans have been successful in continuing to insist that they have the rights that they have, um, despite the fact that the government is trying to retaliate against them, to intimidate them, to stop them from essentially documenting what they're doing.
You you
Um,
talk you talked about how many people in the immigrant community are scared to go to work, they're scared to go shopping, they're scared to go to Walmart or wherever. What has the community done to surround these people and to afford them protection as well as assistance?
again, I'll go back to the amazing grassroots organizing that the people of Minnesota have built. They're bringing people groceries. They are escorting children to schools, to daycares. They're helping their neighbors. in very small, simple ways that add up to just um, an incredible story of all the Minnesotans that make this state a great place to be.
Why are they escorting kids to schools?
Sadly, immigration agents are going to schools and sometimes trying to go inside the schools, sometimes trying to arrest parents
Hmm.
uh, outside the school, essentially,
While they're in the
while they're
pickup line.
while they're in the pickup line, where they're in the drop-off line. Yep. Same things like going to church. ICE agents are waiting outside churches for, for people outside.
So this doesn't sound like the country that I think you and I were living in less than a year and a half ago, where there are people who are scared to go to church, people who are scared to take their kids to school and to pick them up from school. What's the mindset of the immigrant community there in Minneapolis being under siege by these folks?
I mean, I don't want to speak for immigrants, but I think I can say that I hear from people that we've talked to, fear, um, and a hope that this someday this will be over. A lot of confusion. Why am I being targeted? I have lawful status. Why do they want me to leave? I'm not a criminal. Um, Particularly because, again, in Minnesota, we have such a vibrant, welcoming, I like to think so, a welcoming community for people, for immigrants.
I've always enjoyed my time, the number of times I've been there with the great diversity that you have there and the welcoming nature of Minnesota nice. And and I don't know whether that's a term that is still going on there. There's something about Minnesotans that they're just nice people. And I'm sure this is upsetting the culture and the fabric of the Minnesota niceness. And you see the people out there protesting, you want to be a part of it. How do we help you? How do the listeners help you who are living, in the East Coast like I am in Philadelphia?
I mean, the outpouring of support from lawyers, from everyday people, from outside of Minnesota has been absolutely fantastic. And I really appreciate that. I think all Minnesotans do. Um, what I would say is start organizing your own communities. Do what Minnesotans have done. That's how you can best help because they're here now, but they may not always be here. They're going to go somewhere else. This is a
Mhm.
pattern. They've been in LA, they've been in Chicago, they've been in DC. We're hearing more about targeted enforcement. Well, they call it targeted enforcement of the Somali community in Maine. What's really been amazing here is that we have these networks, we have these community ties, and they have allowed us to do so much of the organizing and so much of the protesting that you see. So the best way to support us is to support yourselves and support your neighbors.
I'm big into individual involvement and that one citizen can make a difference because you have two citizens and then you have three and you have a movement. Is that sort of how it started there in Minneapolis?
Yeah, I mean, we have a long history of community organizing. There's a strong labor movement here. We have a lot of cooperatives, be they banks or grocery stores. So
Mhm.
it is something that we've built up over the years, but it's never too late to start. Um, we oftentimes, you talk about Minnesota nice. A lot of that comes from also just knowing that if you're not going to dig somebody out of the ditch of a snowbank, then who's going to dig you out of a ditch?
Mhm.
So it's this I rely on each other and we all support each other. That's, I think, really been like has helped here.
Has that even grown now since you've had to come together as a community to, I don't want to be too dramatic with this, but to fight the federal government?
Yeah.
It's literally a state versus the federal government.
Well, and I mean, like, it's not we're not fighting, you know, they want to call people here professional agitators or label people as being violent or out to get ICE agents. And, you know,
Well, Alicia, hold on.
it's
You don't even have to defend that. We can see with our own damn eyes what's going on. We can see who are the agitators, who are the people carrying guns, who are the people shooting. And if it's something, a professional agitator doesn't carry a whistle and a sign, okay?
yeah.
And to be a professional agitator and stand in 1 degree and negative degree temperature, I don't, that's a lot of agitation.
There'd have to be a lot of money behind that, I
Yes,
guess.
a lot of money. I'm waiting for them to link this to George Soros at some point.
I don't think you have to wait. I think that already happened, or they're trying to.
Uh,
I've seen it.
the shit gets ridiculous sometimes how they can make up things and come to these conclusions. I did read and help me understand that the guy down in DC with the orange hair has begun to walk back some of his rhetoric, and they are withdrawing some of the troops in Minnesota since the latest killing. Have you seen that to be true?
What I do know is that Grego Bovino is not here. I haven't heard that necessarily they're actually withdrawing that many other immigration agents.
Alicia, I couldn't help but get over it. Ravino's little jacket that he wore that reminded me of someone in the German army with that long jacket he had. I don't know whether he purposely meant to do that, but it was just shocking with his over testosterone charged self that the way he was looking, I think that was meant to send a message too. But
Yeah.
he's gone, but have things really began to change this quickly there?
You know, Joe, I don't know. I guess it'll take a couple of days to shake out and see um what's really happening. I still saw on my way to work this morning people outside a daycare in yellow vests to make sure that kids could get into school safely. So uh you know, we're still here, we're still ready um to to be organized, to protest, and to help their neighbors. So we'll see is all I can say.
Well, I want to ask you, how are you feeling about what's going on, both the progress that you guys are making, the resistance, as well as the being under siege?
I have a lot of my feelings change minute to minute, and I think that's probably true of everybody that's living through this. um on the one hand, I have like intense pride for the people who live in this state. And even, I mean, for the people who live all across America, for the people who live all across the world who are standing in solidarity with us. I'm also sad. Um, as you can see, I'm a little teary
Yeah, I
every now and
understand.
again. I'll bring it back to something you said. This isn't the world I want to live in. Um, this isn't the world that any of us should want to live in, where people are afraid to go to the grocery store because they look a certain way. That's not the world I want.
Are you
Um,
guys getting a sense that the fight that you're fighting there against this siege is, have you, that it's resonating throughout America? And the reason I say that is even some of the crazy Republicans are starting to find religion. Very, very slowly, but they're starting to find religion. And I'm attributing it to the things that you guys are doing there in Minneapolis and the sacrifices. And sometimes by their lives, you guys have sacrificed this fight. Does that give you some comfort that you are fighting the fight so that it won't have to be fought other places?
I mean, I definitely hope that no other cities have to go through this. What I think that is like what really comes through what's happening and how we have broken through the noise is what the people are doing. They're exercising this profoundly important constitutional right to observe their government, to document, to record, and to go out and tell people what the government is doing. And that is what has been happening here. Again, like you said, people have actually lost their lives because the government doesn't like them recording.
Those,
But
it's ironic. I like to say that a recording cell phone is actually more powerful than a gun. And
yeah,
that's what we saw here. The recording devices are more powerful, no different in the George Floyd case. The recording devices are more powerful than anything because they would, here's what they say. Don't believe your eyes, believe me. And here's the noise over here. Believe me. Not what's right there in front of you and not what you're seeing. I think that people have gotten fed up with the lies, just the blatant lies that they are telling us of what you just saw with a man being pepper sprayed, a man having a gun pulled out of his pocket and then executed on an American street. That's enough. That is that's a bridge too far for even some of the hardliners to continue to withstand.
yeah. I mean, it's the old adage, the pen is mightier than the sword. But in this case, we see that the phone is mightier than the gun.
Yes.
Um,
I'm
and
I'm I'm also proud that the International Academy of Trial Lawyers was one of the first legal organizations to come out and condemn in no uncertain terms what's going on there by the federal government when citizens are exercising their right to protest. And it is met with guns. This is not, we keep saying this is not America, but this is America, and we will not allow that. And I know on behalf of the Academy, we will continue to speak on. This is not a Republican or Democratic thing. This is not a Trump issue. This is an American rule of law issue. You expect something like this in some damn third world banana republic where people are killed in broad daylight for protesting the government. It's surreal.
you're telling me. Um, the day after Renee
Don't
Good
disagree.
was killed, to I went to 34th in Portland where she died. And then
Yeah.
I walked the 15 minutes to George Floyd Square. Um, and just struck by the kind of the through line there. Um, Violence by state actors captured on camera and how Minnesota has somehow been in the center of these things, and it's baffling to me how that happened. We like Prince and going to the cabin, not being the center of attention,
And ice fishing too.
and ice fishing. um, so it's absolutely. I mean, I don't have any words. I have no words. Kyle, you should talk about how you feel.
I was going to say I really appreciated what you said, Joe, about this not being a Republican or Democrat issue. I don't really view this as a politically charged even. I view this as about basic fundamental rights in our democracy, the rights of people to be free in their persons, free from unlawful seizures, able to go out into the street and speak their minds lawfully and peacefully. And honestly, I don't even necessarily see it as exclusively a Minnesotan issue. It's happening in Minnesota right now, but these issues are pressing all around our country. And we all know it's Minnesota's at the center of it right now, but this touches, in my view, the rights of every single American.
It's like they've taken a flamethrower to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They've just ev eviscerated them, and even, dare we say, the Second Amendment.
Well,
It-
Joe, they've tried.
yes. Yeah.
I'm not giving them the win.
Well, we can talk about the Second Amendment on another episode and how suddenly the most pro-gun president, I think he said he was, doesn't want citizens to lawfully carry firearms because it's not serving his purpose. And that sounds a little political, but at least pretend to be intellectually consistent. And there's no pretense here. If it serves his purpose, then he puts it forward. And I know that sounds political, but those are damn facts. They are. Kyle, I couldn't help but look over Alicia's shoulder and see her sign that says silence is betrayal. I'm glad that you and your law firm have not been silent. You guys have been out there defending the rule of law. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the litigation that you've helped spearhead there in Minneapolis?
Absolutely, Joe. So Ciresi Conlin, along with our partners at the ACLU of Minnesota, and two other firms here in town, Forsgren Fisher and Rich Law, back in December, very shortly after this so-called surge of immigration enforcement started, filed a lawsuit in the case of Tincher versus Noem, which is a case on behalf of 6 individual plaintiffs and a class of protesters and observers of ICE activity here in Minnesota.
Is that the case that we've been hearing about in the press, the class action lawsuit?
Yes, it is. In earlier this month, the district court in our case entered a preliminary injunction um, to prevent ICE from retaliating against peaceful protesters and observers. So that did make national news. There are, of course, a number of other cases as well that you may have been hearing about, but
Yes.
Our case Tincher certainly has been in the news.
Kyle, it sounds kind of corny from a lawyer standpoint that you had to get a federal judge to say, federal government, follow the Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
It's
we had 6 individual plaintiffs, and the district court found a likelihood of success for all 6 to show for 3 of them that they had their First Amendment rights violated and that they were retaliated against, and for 3 of them that they were subject to stops that violated the Fourth Amendment because there was no basis or reasonable suspicion for the stop. So,
Alicia,
yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead. Alicia, I know the ACLU is also spearheading litigation about racial profiling also. What's going on with that litigation?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that Kyle and Ciresi Conlin and Forsgren Fisher and all of our partners have been so amazing in helping us or getting these lawsuits off the ground. We have a similarly all-star team on the case Hussein versus Noem. We have people from Green Espel, Robbins Kaplan, and then Covington, um, who are building out this case that was filed um, just a couple of weeks ago. And so it's still new. That case challenges like conduct that I was mentioning earlier, the racial profiling, essentially where the people are being adopted or harassed on the street just because of the color of their skin or potentially the clothes they're wearing or the neighborhood that they're in.
Let me, two things. One, I have to give a plug again for the International Academy of Trial Lawyers. Past presidents are at both Robbins and Kaplan and the Ciresi firm. And I want to give a shout out to our presidents and to those two law firms for being the tip of the spear when it comes to protecting the rule of law. Now, Kyle, how does the litigation that you guys are pursuing, how does that intersect with Alicia's litigation, if at all?
Right now, they've been on separate litigation tracks. There's so many different litigations that have grown out of this so-called Operation Metro Surge that the federal government has initiated.
I
There's
love how
also a
polite you are by calling it a surge and Metro Surge. I wonder what you do, what you call it when we're not here on the podcast.
like I call it Operation Metro Surge, Joe.
Okay. You don't call it
Kyle
the
is very
Nazi
polite.
takeover like I do?
I certainly do not, and
Okay.
we're not. The state also has the state of Minnesota has also brought a challenge, which is actually trying to end the federal government's presence here. I think it's worth noting our case with where we're trying to protect peaceful observers and protesters really has not in any way challenging the immigration activities that the federal government claims they're trying to do. So, case has nothing to do with stopping them from removing people that may not have lawful status or any other anything else to do with it. It's really about when there are people out protesting, out observing, that they should be able to do that. They shouldn't be arrested for that. They shouldn't have guns pointed at them, put in their face. They shouldn't be detained for that or pepper sprayed or really anything
How
else.
are you enforcing that though? Because notwithstanding the rulings, you still see, and again, I'm only on the TV and maybe there's something different. You still see these same activities being done by these officers against protesters.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that the injunction had issued by the district court. It was stayed a short time after that by the Court of Appeals. But in terms of enforcing it, I mean, the reality is whether the injunction's in place or not, individuals have the right to protest and to record uh, and observe peacefully. And one of the main things we've been working to do on the case, and Alicia's actually been the one spearheading this issue, is being out there in the community, talking to people when these incidences occur to, as best we can, get individuals to come forward and tell their stories so that we can document it. Our intention is to continue in the district court with uh, showing violations of people's constitutional rights as they occur and continue to build out that record, which I think is going to be essential as we move forward with our case into further steps and potentially a permanent injunction of some kind.
Do you expect this litigation and the activities that are going on right now with the administration to morph into civil litigation against the government and individual officers, whether it's breaking down windows, taking citizens from their home in underwear in the cold, and all these other violations that we see? You expect that to morph into civil litigation?
I would say anytime there's these incidents, you know, our case that we filed back in December and that on which we've gotten the injunction is on a class-wide basis, and we're trying to get broad protections for well, protections for protesters for the exact violations that have already occurred. For individual cases, yes, and I think people have individual claims when they are singled out. And this case, our case is one of many. It's one piece of the puzzle, but there's going to be more individual civil rights cases. I had mentioned the state's case. There was another case filed by the state this past weekend related to access to investigate the killing of Alex Preti. And there was another I apologize. The district court issued TRO over the weekend related to preservation of information by the government in that case.
All
So,
these things are crazy, Alex and Alicia, that we have to ask the court to tell people to preserve evidence where there has been a shooting. We have to ask the courts to tell the government to let us investigate. And we keep using the term unprecedented because these are unprecedented times. The What's your take on this, Kyle, and the where the rule of law will stand when this is done?
Well, I think I've got a lot of takes on it, Joe, but one of the main ones is I'm couldn't be happier that we're having this discussion, and I really appreciate you and the Academy for having this rule of law forum and for discussing these topics because I think that's really in some sense, it's the whole ball game that we continue to say these are the rights, this is the way things are supposed to be. If we just start to accept those things and we don't realize that what's going on isn't normal, then we're really in trouble. I view this case as about the rule of law and the vitality of our democracy. I think in our democracy, all power comes from the people, right? And we have a system of limited government, and we have individual rights. And it's not a matter of grace from the government that people have those rights. Those rights are inalienable, and they come from people. And I think one of the most inspiring things about this case has been you've seen in mass the people of Minnesota stepping out into the streets to exercise their rights, and that's never going to change. We're a free people, and they have the right to get out and protest and observe peacefully, and they're doing it. So, from my perspective, we're lawyers. We're using the courts to do what we can do. That's our trade tools of our trade is to go in and try to get an injunction, try to document things. But ultimately, the real power is with the people. And I view our job as trying to help those people on the ground who really are going out to protect their neighbors, to protect their communities, and they're doing so at great risk to themselves. We've seen they're risking arrest, their liberty, they're risking their personal safety, and in some cases, tragically, their lives. And, so from my perspective, when we're in court, we're trying to represent them and to protect them on the legal side, but ultimately the power is with the people.
Alicia,
But
oh, you go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was going to jump in and say, I think that this moment shows us both some of the inherent weaknesses of the system that we currently have, and some of the strengths of the system and of the people. We're seeing that long time allowing our rights to be eroded in terms of holding law enforcement or government agents accountable lands us here. As a lot of trial lawyers know, I'm sure, it's really difficult to hold law enforcement agents who act in violation of the Constitution accountable. And so I
Especially with
think
some
this
of the
is,
rulings that the Supreme Court has given on immunity.
yeah, I mean, starting 50 years ago, the whole invention out of whole cloth of qualified immunity. Steps by step, it feels like we've gotten a little lazy. I see that the people, even though the system isn't quite doing what it needs to do, the people are answering and the people are stepping up. And so I think that this is going to be a really important step in our democracy, what we learn from this moment and how we see people stepping up and how courts aren't necessarily doing the work that they need to be doing. Lawyers are doing those things, but the system as it is making it more difficult for the everyday citizens to exercise their power that they have. Like Kyle was saying, the power is with the people, and we're seeing Minnesotans exercise that power, and that's amazing.
Thus the expression, the first thing we do is kill all the lawyers, and then we can have tyranny. And I'm glad that
Yeah.
there are people like you and myself who they will have to kill before we can have tyranny. And one thing I like that you guys are doing, well, let me change it. I don't think when I was in law school, and I can't speak for either of you two, that you ever thought you would do this type of litigation in against the government to allow people to protest. This is just such a well settled area of the law after what we went through with the Vietnam protests, Kent State, the civil rights movement, the seeking of dogs and fire hoses. I thought that we had progressed past that. And did you ever think that we would be here where we are now?
In my
It's
nightmares, maybe. Um,
I'll say I
My
thought
nightmares usually involve me falling off a cliff.
I'll say that I thought I don't know if I would go all the way back to law school, but once I started to see some of the National Guard deployments at the beginning of last year, I did think it's only a matter of time until there's a federal government presence in Minnesota, where and that's another reason I'm so appreciative to the Academy for having this discussion. And as I mentioned before, in my view, this is happening in Minnesota right now, but it's a nationwide issue. It can happen anywhere, and I think one of the inspiring things about what's happened here is because people have turned out and because they have exercised their rights to protest and to record, it has made the news everywhere, and those videos that people are taking are making a difference across the nation and really internationally. So, no, I never foresaw some of the types of abuses that we've seen, happen to peaceful protesters and observers here in Minnesota. I didn't think that that was going to come to pass, but now that it is, I'm glad that people are still in Minnesota are still showing out as a community to stand up for their neighbors and for themselves.
Well, what I like that I'm I'm just tickled pink that you guys are both here, but what I am hoping that other lawyers see is that you as individual lawyers can make a difference, or in your instance, Kyle, a law firm can make a difference in fighting the federal government, because we often receive enough emails and text messages from members in the academy saying, what can we do? I want to do more. And I think you guys are showing what you are doing and what we can do in the doing more. So I want to end this, and I could talk to you guys all day, I'm just upset. I have to turn off the news nowadays with what's going on, but you're living it. I always ask people to give us something hopeful. And you two being here makes me hopeful. And what you're doing makes me hopeful. So tell our listeners as we conclude this and you guys continue to fight the great fight, what is giving you guys hope?
what
You go
gives
first,
me
Alicia.
hope, what gives me hope is the people that I talk to every day who are out there um observing, and when they tell me why it's important and why they're doing it, why they're risking their personal safety, that gives me hope. When I talk to my friends who are doing grocery delivery and why that's important, that gives me hope. When I see Bruce Springsteen write a song or do a song for Minneapolis, um, when I see all of the people across the globe saying what we're seeing happening is wrong and also wanting to stand up, that gives me hope. People give me hope. People are
I
great.
can I can tell you, piggybacking on that, every international fellow I've heard from the academy, without fear of contradiction, is supporting you guys or saying do more, and continue to speak out. So the international world who appreciates the rule of law and the consistency of the rule of law is fully on your side and is backing you 100% from Canada to Switzerland to New Zealand and every place in between. All right, go ahead, Kyle. You get to wrap this up by giving us
Well,
what makes you
I have
hopeful.
to echo Alicia's points because the most hopeful thing is the situation on the ground of the community standing up and standing firm. under really brutal conditions. People are undaunted. And that's the single most inspiring thing to me in working on this case. And it inspires me to come in and put in the long hours that we as lawyers all know we have to do. It's light work compared to what the people out there are dealing with and doing. Another thing I think that really has given me hope in this case is it's another people related, but I've never had a case like this where whenever anyone I know or anyone I talk to in the legal community finds out about it, to a person, they've said to me, please let me know if there's anything I can do. Thank you so much for doing that work. And that's really inspiring to me because I know that people aren't just saying it, they're also acting on it. And people would be there whenever we need to because I think they realize this is fundamentally about our democracy and about rule of law and about people being able to have rights. And the fact that we're having these discussions, the fact that everyone gets that in this lawyer community and at the academy is inspiring for me.
Thank you both for giving us hope in these troubled times. We appreciate you. We appreciate the work you're doing. I'm Joe Tucker, President of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers. Thank you for listening to The Rule of Law, the Academy Speaks. Continue to fight the fight to uphold the rule of law. You all take care.